Good afternoon, it's Garland Nixon, and it is a holiday here in America, in case you're not here, but we got one or two things that I think we need to address. Let's talk. Yellow, Garland Nixon here, and let me get a little less headroom. We don't want max headroom, right? Max headroom. Some people may remember that advertisement. All right, let's get going. Um, Interesting article. Let's start here. President Putin says it's legally impossible to sign a peace treaty with Ukraine now, according to President Putin. Let's going over some important news. Sealing a peace accord with Ukraine is legally impossible at present, Russian President Vladimir Putin has stated. While Moscow would like to sign such an agreement eventually, the current Ukrainian leadership has lost all legitimacy by canceling elections, Putin told reporters on Thursday. Now, I think it's important to understand that this is not anything new, and it does not have anything to do with the 28, 13, 15, the point plan there where the numbers of points keep changing, which, might I add, if you look into that, what you find out was that it was leaked really to kill it. And that these were supposed to be kind of like talking points. These were points they were going to work on, and it got leaked as a poison pill so that the discussion could be killed. But this was not any kind of a final plan at all, and it was talking points, and it was things they were working on. It got leaked, and they had to try to clean it up. But here's the point that I think President Putin's making that is important, and that is that the Russians have made this point for a while. In order to sign an agreement with anyone, the person has to legally represent the entity that they're signing for, right? I can't sign an agreement as if someone says, I'm going to make a deal with Coca-Cola, Garland Nixon signs it. Or if Coca-Cola, let's say that they have particular rules as, every once a year, we have to have an election for a new CEO. And it's been more than a year and they haven't had the elections. If I sign a contract, then whoever's on the other side of the contract can go to court, and they can certainly argue that, hey, we got the bylaws of Coca-Cola. According to the bylaws, he wasn't officially the president, so we don't have to adhere to that contract. Nobody wants to sign a contract with some guy who's may, in some instances, be deemed as an illegitimate leader in the court, because then you can't be held. You put all this money out and the contract falls apart. Here's my point. According to the Constitution of Ukraine, they were supposed to have an election, and they didn't have an election. And the Zelensky regime, made all kind of rulings. Well, because of this and that, there's drones, the weather's bad, there's ongoing war, blah, blah, blah. We can't have an election. So, Zelensky is still going to be the official president, but there's nothing in the actual Ukrainian constitution that condones the actions that they've taken. They just did like extra constitutional moves to keep Zelensky allegedly in office. I'm not going to use the word power because the man doesn't really have any power, but he's in office right now. So they used extra constitutional means to keep him in office. And all the Russians are saying is, look, and this is legitimate for this reason. We've been had over and over the Minsk agreements. We're not going to move 1 inch closer to Russia. We're not expanding NATO. We've been had over and over again. These people are untrustworthy and they're liars. If we are going to sign a deal, this deal has to be legally sound in all manners. We got to look at it and say we've crossed our I's and dotted our T's. Why? Because one of the issues is this, and that is, and we all know this, and everybody asked this question, and I'm sure the Russians know. That is this. These people they've lied to you. They never kept a deal. They don't keep a ceasefire in Gaza. They don't keep a ceasefire anywhere. For God's sake, they've never signed a treaty with the Native Americans that they've kept. Why would you expect them to tell the truth, which is legitimate? That being the case, anything the Russians or anyone else signs with the U.S., the Iranians, the North Koreans, the issue is, how can you keep the empire of lies aligned with whatever they put their signature on. And most people say you can't, right? Okay, so if the Russians are even considering signing something, they got to cross their I's and dot their T's. And what they're saying is, and makes sense, look, your own constitution says this guy's not the legitimate president. But what does the Russians say? It is legally impossible. They didn't say we don't want to sign it. We're not going to sign it. We're not opposed. They're saying, legally speaking, this guy is not the official representative of the country. And if we sign it, we know you bastards will come back in 2 years and say, well, yeah, everybody signed it, but looks like you were right. Oh, darn. You were 100% correct. They know they'll do it. In fact, I don't know if you know this. There was Denmark and Sweden, I believe, or Denmark and Germany, whatever it was. I think Denmark and Sweden. They were investigating the Nord Stream bombing. Gee, I wonder who did that. And at the time, Russia said, you don't have the legal authority to do this investigation. They said, oh, yes, we do. Darn it. Russia said, you don't. So let's have the United Nations come in. Like, we'll be involved. Germany will be involved, but you don't have the legal authority to do this. And they said, yes, we do. And so they did an investigation at the end of the supposedly towards the end of the investigation. The Russians and others said, okay, let's see the findings of your investigation. And Sweden and Denmark said, come to think of it, you're right. We don't have the authority to do this investigation. So we can't give you the findings because we don't really have the authority, right? When it benefited them, they said they had the authority to do the investigation. And as soon as it was over, they said, you're right, we don't have the authority. Well, the Russians ain't playing this game again. If you're going to get a deal with the Russians, you're going to have to sign, you're going to have elections. Let's see what else they say. Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky, quote, lost his legitimate status as the country's president, Putin pointed out. Under Ukrainian law, presidential elections should have been held in May of 2024. However, Zelensky refused to hold them, citing martial law. Moscow has considered him an illegitimate leader since. Putin noted that while Russia is also locked in a military conflict, it nevertheless held presidential elections in March 2024. How about this? The United States has never, ever said, oh my gosh, we're involved in World War II. We can't have an election. World War I, we can't have an election. How about this? The United States was embroiled in a civil war where like 6% of the population died and they had an election. So don't tell me the country was at war with two parts of the country trying to reunify or deunify, depending on which side you were on, but they still had an election. So the idea that simply because there's war, you don't have an election is absurd. So the only country that I know of involved in here that's saying we can't have an election, the United States, everybody in Europe's having an election, Russia's having an election. For some reason, the only people that can't have an election is the ones that have this screwball puppet who's not in charge of a damn thing. And that's the other part of it that I keep bringing up. And in case you haven't been watching what I've said, I keep saying he can't sign anyway, because if Vladimir Zelensky signs a deal, the Nazis and the radicals in Ukraine are going to say, oh, you signed a deal over there in London with the Ruskies, did you? Yeah. Well, we ain't abiding by it. So if you come back to Kiev, we're killing you. So if he signed a deal, the only thing that it would do would be demonstrate that he's not in charge of anything, and the jig is up. The whole game is out. And at that point, what does Europe say? How does Europe say, oh, we're supporting Zelensky, if Zelensky can't even support Zelensky? So the Russians are making good sense. They're saying, hey, now let's see what else he says. The Russian president said that should any peace agreement be signed, the Ukrainian leadership would have to lift martial law and immediately call elections. However, as things stand at present, the Ukrainian leadership could hardly count on an electoral victory without rigging the vote, Putin answered. So they talk about that, and that's important. It's legitimate. It makes sense, and that's where we are. There's a deal, they're working, and the Russians are meeting with the Americans, apparently in Abu Dhabi or Dubai or one of those kind of sounding places, with a lot of A's and D's and B's. And apparently this guy Driscoll is there. He's making sense. So the guy Driscoll, let me say this, he is the army chief. They fired Kellogg and they replaced him with this guy named Driscoll. The guy Driscoll is apparently a longtime friend and college colleague, a college peer, shall we say, of JD Vance. So he's from the same area. He's from that area there. I don't know if you look at a map. Look at where Marjorie Taylor Greene's from. I think that's the 14th district, which is up near the Tennessee line in Georgia. Look where JD Vance is from, Middletown, Ohio. That's that same. You've got this area. It's interesting. It's upper Georgia, right? Then it goes into Kentucky and even up into Ohio. And you got Rand Paul's from that little old area there. It's not that big. You got Rand Paul's from that area. You got Thomas Massey's from that area. You've got JD Vance is from that area. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene's from that area. It's very interesting that that's an area, some have argued has a very long history of anti-war. Be honest, a lot of poor people who got the hell beat out of them by the globalists, they got closed all of their. So yeah, Robert Barnes brought that up the other day, and I was looking at it, and I'm like, I started mapping it out. Like, where is JD Vance from? Middletown, Ohio. Oh, where's the 14th district? And so Robert Barnes was talking about that the other day on the Duran, and I looked at the map. I love looking at maps, and I'm like, holy crap, it's true. They're a small little area right there, and they're all from that, and they're all like, screw the globalists, can't stand them. They're all like, we're not big on war. Now, I don't know about JD Vance. There are people who are who question his relationship to the old Peter Thiel Palantir. I don't know. I don't know. We'll find out in the long run, but I just know right now, currently, in this particular conflict, all of those people are like, screw this, man. We don't want to do this anymore. I do know that, with the exception of Vance, and he can't very well do it, that there's some pushback against Israel. There's some pushback against war, period. Some coming out of there. For God's sake, you look around at the rest of these members of Congress, you get new. Capitol Hill, I mean, just a bunch of warmongering lunatics. There is some pushback coming from that little area. I find that interesting. Who knows? Barnes brought that to our attention, and I mapped it out, and I'm like, holy crap. And I looked at where each one of them's from and all that, and I'm like, interesting. Maps are very important. Whenever there's a war or anything else, I always go to the map. Whenever there's any conflict, I go to the map and say, what do we see here, right? What are we looking at? All right, let's go on to our next story that I think was a great consequence. This is interesting too, and this comes under NATO going to hell, right? The Baltic nations want EU bailout after Russian sanctions backfire. That's according to Politico. The region has reportedly requested assistance as tourism, investment, and cross-border trade have plunged under restrictions on Moscow. Well, imagine that. You're on the border of a superpower, and your economy counts on cross-border trade, and then you say, we're standing up against this Russia. We're aligned with a superpower that's on the other damn side of the world. How stupid is that? Can you imagine if Canada and Mexico says, we're not doing business with the United States? We're doing back to that. Forget the United States. We're not interested in it. We're closing off our borders with the United States. We're not selling or buying from the United States. We don't want our people going to the United States. We are strictly going to deal with Russia. That would be foolish, would it? It would be economic suicide. But if you're the Baltic states, if you're Kaja Kallas and you're about as bright as a wet match in a dark cave, seems like a great idea to you. Have you watched Kaja Kallas? I think we should take her and Annalena Baerbock and Kamala Harris and put them all on a committee together, the committee of the mindless, brainless puppet politicians for the ruling elite. They're all the same person. Kaja Kallas, Kamala Harris, and Annalena Baerbock are all the same person, politically speaking. All right, let's keep going. In the same way that Macron, Obama, Trudeau, Gavin Newsom, they're all the same person. They got good hair. They're handsome guys. They sound smart, but when you look at their politicians, it's the same old thing. Let's keep going. The European Commission will provide financial aid next year to the Baltic states grappling with economic fallout from EU sanctions on Russia, Politico reported on Thursday, citing officials familiar with the plan. Well, isn't that just wonderful? Isn't that just sweet? These idiots, Finland and all these other countries, we're going to fix you, Russia. We'll shut down cross-border trade. Ha ha ha. And we will prepare for war because, Latvia, I mean, what they got 12 guys or something in a pickup truck. I'm sure the Russian army is petrified of the potential for the mighty Latvian military to drive all the way to Vladivostok. They couldn't drive to Vladivostok if you put them in an old Lada truck. If you put them in an old, or rather, how about this? A brand new Toyota that was running perfect. They couldn't drive to Vladivostok if you just put them on a highway and told them drive there, much less militarily. But at any rate, tourism and investment have slumped across Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, while cross-border trade has largely collapsed due to loss of long-standing commercial ties with Russia. How did that happen? Oh, that's right. Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania closed their own borders and said we ain't doing work with Russia anymore. Nah, screw these maggots over there in Russia. We'll fix them. And now you're calling for a bailout. See, that's the thing about these people. They hate the socialists. We're opposed to socialism. Socialism is evil. The government shouldn't back people out. The government shouldn't do anything. Oh my God, we're broke. Call the government. Government, help, bail us out. We need some socialism now. They, how does it say? They privatize the debt for people, privatization for you, socialism for the ruling elite. The government shouldn't help you if you're hungry or poor or you lost your job because of them. You're probably hungry, poor, and lost your job because of these maggots. So the government shouldn't help you when you're suffering as a result of their policies, but the government should bail them out. Aren't they just wonderful? Anonymous EU officials, oh, those are the worst kind. Good old anonymous. Let's see what the anonymous EU officials say. Told Politico, the initiative is intended to boost the economies of the Baltic states and neighboring Finland. Good old Finland. One of the things that I found out in St. Petersburg that I never even realized was, of course, it was, St. Petersburg, which was Petrograd, it was Stalingrad, it's been Leningrad, and it's been St. Petersburg, right? But when it was besieged by the German army, it wasn't just the German army. It was the Germans and the Finns. The German and the Finland army did this. And of course, there were some from the Baltic states also, but largely the Germans and the Finns, which I'm glad to say a whole lot of them perished. But the bottom line was this: the Finns. What do they got? 6 million people? And, if you add Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Finland together, they may come up with Moscow. Maybe not. They may all of them together come up with the population of Moscow. Maybe not. They will, with Regional Commissioner Raphael Fido expected to lead the effort as the countries head to Brussels with an extensive list of demands. We've stood behind you, and now we're broke and poor. We got money. You know what? I hope the EU says, well, I got good news and bad news. The good news is we'd love to get the money, give you the money. The bad news is we ain't got it either. As a result of some of these brilliant sanctions, we're broke. So you're broke, we're broke, everybody's broke, except the Russians. The Russians are in pretty good shape. Maybe we can steal the Russians' money. They're the only ones in town who actually have money. Isn't it ironic that they want to go after the Russians' money? And why they want to go after the Russians' 300 billion or 140 billion, depending on what they say on a given day, how much they've already stolen of it. But isn't it interesting that at a time when we're told that the Russians are stupid and evil and crazy and all these other things, that Europe is like, we're broke. Does anybody around here have enough money that we can use to keep harassing the Russians? Yeah, who? The Russians. Oh, good. Let's steal the Russians' money. So these Baltic states came to EU with a list of demands. You got to love that. They always got a list of demands, don't they? They live on a list of demands. They're giving the Russians a list of demands. Kaja Kallas demanded to the Chinese, you better do what we're telling you to do, Chinese, or you're going to lose Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. And that, my friend, will be the end of the Chinese economy, huh? Anyway, The aid plan will reportedly be discussed at an Eastern European leaders summit in Helsinki. Skeptics, however, warn that any near-term support Fito can offer will be limited, with the EU's 7-year budget already running low and the scale of the challenge far greater than the funds available. All four nations share a border with Russia and have imposed multiple rounds of sanctions while tightening entry rules for Russian citizens. In doing so, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania have all taken a hit, the outlet noted. So according to Politico, these people said, we'll fix Russia. Russia's evil and terrible, and we're going to close off our border. Oh, wait a minute. We're making a lot of money from that border. What are we going to do now? I know we'll go to the EU and beg them for money. EU, can we have money? And the EU's like, well, we were going to ask you if we could borrow a few dollars until we get ourselves together. Just, so enough for a beer. You know what I mean? Maybe enough for a pint of beer and, maybe some schnitzel. The Germans love schnitzel. How about we get some schnitzel? You guys got any schnitzel in Finland? No, we don't have schnitzel. And we don't have anything else because we're idiots. And this is what idiots get. Isn't it great when you see a plan come together? Isn't it great when you see some people say, we're going to fix the Russians, we're prepared? Now, might I add this? This is something you have to take. We have to take note of. According to the Finns and the Lithuanians, the Latvians, the Estonians, they are preparing to fight the Russians, right? We're getting ready for the Russians. We're going to stand up against the Russians. They're coming. They're coming in 27, 29, somewhere soon. They're coming, and we're going to be prepared. Oh, but before we get ready to fight the Russians, you think we could borrow a few dollars for some soup and maybe a pair of warm shoes because we're broke? I'm not an economist. I'm not even an accountant. I'm not even a certified bookkeeper, but I'm thinking to myself, if you're prepping to fight the Russians, you might need tanks, armored personnel carriers, stuff that costs money, and you can't even buy a beer and a schnitzel anymore. I just think perhaps there's some holes in your plans to fight the Russians. Perhaps there is some economic holes. You're planning to fight the Russians and you don't have any money. You have to go borrow money from the EU, and the EU's broke because they're just as stupid as you are. And you're planning on fighting the Russians. Oh, you got it. Can you make this stuff up? Can you make this stuff? And you wonder why. Let's be honest. Right now, the Trump administration is like, hey, we're not talking with these people. They're idiots. Let's see. Estonian finance minister Jürgen Ligi, good old Jürgen, said residents who once relied on cross-border economic activities had lost these connections. They lost them? Oh, how'd that happen? They were like, hey, what about your cross-border connections? God damn, where the hell is those cross-border? I had them somewhere. Where's the cross-border connections? They lost them. They can't find them. They don't know where they are. They've lost their cross-border connections. He claimed Estonia has suffered the biggest blow from the Ukrainian conflict, citing pressure on investment and jobs. And the stupidest people should suffer the biggest blow. I think that's reasonable, Mr. Ligi, whatever the hell your name is. The stupidest people should get the biggest blow. That's the way it is. You idiots. You know what it is? These people are ultimately going to starve, I think. And then there won't be any Latvians, Estonians, Lithuanians, or Finns. And I don't want that to happen because I love people. And you know what? I was in Venezuela. Last time I was in Venezuela, I met people who were like from the socialist parties of those things that would travel to Venezuela. They probably all been locked up by now, but they had traveled to Venezuela because Venezuela is a socialist country. And they were there they're like, oh, I'm from Latvia or Lithuania, whatever. And I'm a member of the Socialist or Communist Party, whatever. And I met them there. I didn't even know they had socialist or communist parties. I didn't hardly really know what socialism and communism was at that time. I learned from people politically, right, what it was, but I had no idea, much less that they had parties. And so they seem like really nice people. And I'm like, they seem like decent people. But I have a feeling there's going to be less of them. They're because of their leaders. Because if Kaja Kallas is your leader, yeah, you are in deep and serious trouble. You ain't going to make it. You're not making it. What's the guy's name in charge of Finland? Is it Stub or some kind of whatever? I don't know what his name is. I'm just saying, the Finnish prime minister, I'm just saying, these people are idiots. And when you have idiots in charge, I'll put it like this. You can say what you want about Trump, right? You know me, I'm a lefty. I'm no Trump fan. Say what you want about Trump or say what you want about JD Vance. Lots of things about these guys that I would complain about. But let's be honest about it. Right now, Trump and JD Vance are like, what's happening in Ukraine? Oh my God, that is, ooh, buddy, it looks like a loss. I think we better try to skate. Let's try to get up out of here. Are they globalists? Are they trying to rule the world? Are they, causing mayhem and supporting the genocide and all these things? Fair enough. Yes, they are. There's multiple reasons to criticize them. But when it comes to Ukraine, they're somewhat living in the real world. They're like, hey, ugh, yikes. Looks like we lost that one. How can we get out of this without taking a big L? Let's make a deal. Let's make a deal. You know what? Good. Make a deal. Make a deal. That's smart. That's not stupid. That's wise. You may be stupid in other areas. I really believe they're going to back down when it comes to Venezuela. I don't think that's happening. I don't think the attack on Venezuela is happening. You know, if you've been watching my channel, I've been saying for a long time, I don't think they're going to do it. I may be wrong, but we'll have to see. But anyway, you look at it, I think that we have to accept that in the thing, when it comes to Ukraine, the Trump team doesn't want to take that big L. They want to get the hell out because they know that they're heading for a fall of Saigon, fall of Kabul type thing. That's what I think. Somebody says Trump wants the war to go forever. He may want it to go forever, but right now he understands that a big loss is coming and he don't want that loss. Now you can say it's good, bad, or indifferent. His motives are not pure, fair enough. But if I don't get nuked, I think I can live with impure motives. You know what I'm saying? If I don't get nuked, I ain't going to question the motives. If Trump says I want out, if he's able to get out, good. I don't think he is. But he's never dealing with the stupidest people on earth. And the Finns, there's going to be less Finns and Latvians and Lithuanians. Ultimately, what's going to happen? They're going to be impoverished. They're going to be hungry. They're going to be asking the EU for help. The EU is going to say, I don't have any help because Germany is collapsing. France is collapsing. The UK, they're all collapsing economically, and there ain't going to be nothing we can do to fix this. So we will see. We will see what happens, but it doesn't. Despite the economic pain, the Baltic states remain among the most hawkish EU members in Russia. They're pressing for further military buildup, even as the U.S. promotes the new peace initiative, while Brussels insists EU support for Kiev will continue. Exactly. And as a result, they're going to get what's coming to them. Play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. They're going to get, they're so invested, they can't let go, but they're going to get what you get when you do these kind of stupid things. All right, let's see what else we got here. U.S. wants Ukraine peace deal before security guarantees, according to Politico. Man, Politico is, everybody's on Politico. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, unlike, I'm sure he didn't want to say these things, he's Joe Neocon, has told EU officials that Washington wants Ukraine to sign a peace deal before it agrees to any security guarantees, right? Kiev's been seeking formal assurances. So what is this security guarantees? It's just a way of saying we want Ukraine into NATO. And they're like, yes, we think that a security guarantee coming from the U.S. will be similar to Article 5. Article 5 ain't even Article 5 like people think it is. I've said this and I'll say it again. If the Russians were to throw a couple of hundred Russianiks into Lithuania and Latvia and Finland and Estonia and flatten every one of their bases and everything they got, if the U.S. was, if the Russians were to call and say, these little pests are getting on our nerves, U.S., we're going to flatten them. That's what we're going to do. I know it may not seem right. We really don't feel good about it, but we're going to flatten them. Here's what we're going to do, U.S. How long is it going to take to get we don't want war, but we've had it with these little mice. They're ankle biters. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to flatten them. There ain't no way around that. But we're going to give you 60 days. Now, what'll it take? 60 days. We'll give you 60 days, 30 days, whatever, to get all your troops out. Get every American troop out, because I'm telling you, there ain't no way around it. On January 1st, there ain't going to be no military bases in Estonia, Finland, any of them. They're all gone. Now, afterwards, you can decide how to deal with that. But we'd like to give you to get out of the way, because we don't want a nuclear weapon. The U.S. would take all their soldiers out. Oreshniks would rain down. Boom, 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 boom. There'd be piles of dust where Latvia, Estonia, and Finland, where all of their bases used to be, and the U.S. wouldn't raise a finger. The U.S. now would not say, "Oh yeah, you killed Estonia, you're gonna get it now," and then they'd we're gonna fight. Do you think the United States would trade a single soldier for Estonia, Latvia, and these maggots? None. And when I say the maggots, I don't mean the people. I love the people. I mean Kaja Kallas and their globalist ilk. Not happening. Not happening. Not happening. They'd call Germany, France would call and say, "Okay, America, that's it. We got Article 5 now. You ready to fight the Russians? We must fight the Russians." And Americans would say, what the hell do you mean we? Tell you what, you guys go over there and fight the Russians. We'll send you a couple bullets or something. Call us when you get finished. But they killed Estonia, Latvia. They destroyed all their bases. Yeah, but they can build new bases. I mean, really, we're trying to talk. We got some things going on right now here, fentanyl, stuff like that. So we'll give you a buzz later. No. The United States would not institute Article 5 for them. The United States doesn't care about them. Look what they're doing to Ukraine. They're proxies. They're cannon fodder. They're expendable assets. No way in hell the United States would give one soldier for these people. They're living in a fever dream. Kiev has been seeking formal security assurances from its Western sponsors and insists they should come before a peace agreement. No, you're not getting any. We're just going to fight to the last Ukrainian. I don't think you understand what that means. It means when there are no Ukrainians left, then nothing else happens. Fight to the last Ukrainian. What happens then? Are you guys coming in? No, we ain't coming in. That just means that there's no more Ukrainians. That's all that really means. But there'll be some female Ukrainians. Americans and Westerners will be happy to come in and impregnate them and start a whole new generation of kind of half Ukrainians. But that's about the best they're going to do. Sorry, bad news. The Ukrainian men are getting wiped out right now. Do you have any idea what's going on the border? It ain't pretty. We're going to talk about it. Let's go next. Here's a good article. Let's see, what do we have? Give me a second here. So what I'm going to talk about, my computer's doing a little bit of freezing. It does that sometimes. But come on. What we're going to talk about is sometimes when I have a lot of, when I'm streaming and I have a lot of tabs open, she'll kind of, act up a little bit because we're running 1080p here. So we're a little frozen. But the bottom line is this. So one thing I was going to cover, is this it? There we go. There we go. This is what I'm looking for. Let's take a look at Apple, whatever the hell that is. I don't know, but I'm going to show you something. Let me show you a picture. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio refuses to meet EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. But he's refused to meet with Kaja Kallas, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, citing a political article. According to the publication, Kallas has been virtually sidelined due to her complicated relationship with the Trump administration. Even Marco Rubio, the administration's most Euro-leaning official, is refusing bilateral meetings with Kallas, the article states. So what's going on now? Look, it's hilarious. The Trump people will meet with the Ukrainians, Nazis or whatever. They'll meet with Putin's people. They'll meet with anything, but they won't meet with that flipping idiot. Don't get me wrong. Look, now I know a couple people that are like, yeah, Kaja Kallas, she's pretty. She just looks stupid to me. She looks lost to me. She's like this. We've got to stand up against the Russians. And I'm looking at her like her eyes are like this. They've got that psychotic Hillary Clinton look. Like her eyes are always like this. Where's the picture of her? Let me see. They're always open. They've always got that, you know how sometimes when a person has a round and there's a lot of white under their eye, there's all this white under the bottom of their eye. Look it up and they say sometimes that's a sign of a of a sociopath. You look at her eyes, there's always a lot of white under it. And she always has this smile. Let's look at this psychotic, sociopathic person. Let's make a little closer look at Kaja Kallas. Look at that look. That's a sick person right there. It's a look of a combination of stupidity, right? And confidence. Think about that combination. You're an idiot, but you're a confident idiot. You think you know everything. So she's got this look on her face. Her hair is just kind of dangling there, just hanging like hay on the head of a scarecrow. That's what it looks like. Her head looks like somebody made a scarecrow and they used hay for hair. So her hay's just hanging down there. And these vacuous dead shark eyes. You know, when they show the Jaws and it's do. And just before the shark bites somebody, he rolls over and these dead shark eyes. And he clamps down on them. Yeah. And her face is almost, look at that smile. It's you know what? It's the kind of smile when you watch those old World War II movies and there's these Nazis and they smile when they're like torturing somebody. We have ways of making you talk, swine. You know, and some poor bastard sitting there saying, I don't know anything, Mr. Nazi. We will find out if you know anything. And they're beating the person. They're putting a cigarette out. Cigarettes being put out in their eye. All these horrible things. And the Nazi general's just sitting there smiling. Right. They're having a blast. Let's see if we can get something even worse. Let's do this. Let's see if we can really get that that look. Let's get the real look. We want to see this. You guys want to see something that's truly horrifying to all of humanity? And voila, look at this. Huh? Kaja Kallas and Ursula von der Leyen. Look at the fangs on the vampire of Ursula von der Leyen. My God. And then, see, they've got those both square Nazi-looking cheekbones, the hay-looking hair that's just loose and hanging on their head. They're staring off. You know what they look like? They're both staring at someone being tortured. That's the look on their face. And the same smile. It's not a smile of happiness. It's not a smile of joy. It's a smile of evil. A smile of deep, sick, and twisted evil in the bowels of their souls. Even Rubio, I mean, come on, this guy's no Gandhi here, right? He's a neocon monster. And Rubio, a guy who's clapping for a genocide, they're too much for him. When it gets to the point that Marco Rubio, they're like, okay, Marco Rubio, we got some meetings for you, right? All right, let's get started. We've got Satan. And Martin Rubio's like, okay, Satan at 10 o'clock. Next, then we've got the evil demon Blottish. You're going to meet him at 1. Okay, I'm meeting the evil demon. We've reincarnated Hitler, Mussolini, and Napoleon all together. Okay, fair enough. I'll meet them at 3. What next? And then you're meeting Kaja Kallas and von der Leyen at 5. Oh, hell no. You got to be out of your mind. I mean, okay, the devil and Hitler. I was like, yeah, fair enough. But if you think I'm meeting them crazy sons of bitches, that ain't happen. Not going to happen. So you got a guy who's a sociopath. I guess it's like this. He's a narcissist. A narcissist is below a sociopath who's kind of below a psychopath. So I guess he's looking saying, I'm a narcissist, but damn, You know what I mean? Almost like Al Qaeda and ISIS, where Al Qaeda's like, you know what? Yeah, we want to kill people and cut heads off and stuff like that. But those people are taking things a little too far. Okay, that's the difference here. I think that Rubio's looking at these saying, there's a lot of things I can deal with. Maybe the devil himself. But this this picture of horror, fear, and pure evil. I apologize to everyone who may have to eat today. But looking at that picture is something that I'll put it like this. If you want to lose weight, here's the plan. Put that picture in your kitchen. Although you'll probably end up like dying of malnutrition, if you put that picture in your kitchen, well, every time you come in, you'll be like, I think I'm going to get something to eat. It's coming up. You ain't gonna eat looking at these two people. So there we go. The leaders of Europe, they're taking Europe in a good place. But I wonder why Estonia, Latvia, and Finland and the Baltics are going to von der Leyen to beg for money. You know what? There's no honor amongst thieves. Here's the beauty of it. They're going to go to von der Leyen and they're going to say, Frau von der Leyen, my people are starving. We're hungry. Our jobs are gone. And it was all because of the decisions we made based on your advice. What do you think we should do? And Frau von der Leyen says, what do you mean we? Good for them. Less mouths to feed. Wonderful. I'm telling you right now, they're done. They're finished. They're through. Let's see what else we got here. We got some other articles we got to look at. Ooh, this is one. So one of the things that's going on, one of the things, and I'm going to show you this article that I think it's critical that we look at this article. And I tell you why. Because a lot of times you can learn by some of the things that's going on in the article, in the mainstream media, right? All we have heard for who knows how long is what? The Ukrainians are winning. The Russians are losing. The Russians are losing 1,000, 100,000,000 men a day, and the Ukrainians are one daring Ukrainian with a knife, a small penknife and a pickle jar, is knocking down Russian drones, and he's defeating a division of highly trained Spetsnaz fighter, unarmed. He's killing them all. The Russians have no chance. Elite Ukrainian brigade commander warns of critical situation and major losses on the front lines. This is military-watch-magazine.com. It seems like they're starting to, somebody somewhere for some reason is starting to face reality. Former commander of the Ukrainian Azov brigade, Maxim Zorin, good old Adolf Zorin, has issued a warning regarding the critical situation faced by forces on the front lines. Critical situation, stating that losses include not only settlements, as Western sources have widely claimed. Now think about this. Not only settlements means they're losing land, right? But entire sectors. So they're not losing a settlement, they're using entire regions, right? As Russian army units advance rapidly. The battlefield situation for Ukraine is only getting worse, he stated, adding, in some areas, in the absence of urgent decisions, I wonder what those would be, and even in the present, look, in the absence of urgent decisions, let's add, in the presence of urgent decisions. The situation is becoming critical. In fact, I don't remember such a rapid enemy advance for a long time. That's kind of the way the Russians fight. They wear you down until you're so weak that you just stumble, that you just drop, kind of like in martial arts when they say you should, or, self-defense, whatever, where, at some point, the ultimate victory is all you have to do is just touch your adversary on the forehead. And they're so beaten, they're so weak that this, and they drop, right? His statement follows the raising of concerns by multiple Western and Ukrainian forces that the front lines are approaching an eventual breaking point. Well, by multiple Western and Ukrainian sources, yeah, but not by Kaja Kallas and von der Leyen, not by Macron or the UK. You look, if I was Trump really, here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom Trump line. Trump just needs to say, guys, you think you got this? Yeah, you think you're going to defeat the Russians? Yeah. Give me a buzz and let me know when you're finished. I'll come in and clean up. Let me know when you get finished with the Russians. You got them where you need them now? Yeah, well, then you sure as hell don't need me. So I guess I'm gone. I don't know if Trump can do that. I don't know politically. I don't know if he has the strength to do that. But it ought to be like, yes, we're going to make a deal with the Russians and we're going to give them what the hell they want, because this is the Trump team right now, to be quite frank. The Trump people are like, we kind of got to give them what they want because they're winning. And Europe is like, we must not do that. You're giving in to the Russians. You must be working for Putin, you evil Putin person. At which point, Trump ought to say, yeah, you got a good point there. I am kind of giving in to Putin, huh? Yeah. I think you guys got the right idea, and that is go in there and fix those Russians once and for all. You show them who's boss. Call me. I'll be at the White House. I got a new ballroom. I'm working on a new ballroom. Things going on here. Got to play a couple rounds of golf at Mar-a-Lago. Just when you get finished beating up those Russians, give me a call and I'll come in and inspect their carcasses. I'll go and look at all of the ground you've taken. Hey, invite me to Red Square when you plant the Ukrainian flag in Red Square. I'll come there to take a look at it. See you later, right? In large part, now listen to this. Here's the other part. The front lines are approaching an eventual breaking point, in large part due to increasingly extreme personnel shortages. Well, wait a minute. I thought if we just gave them more planes, we gave them more weapons and more MK777s and HIMARS, SMIMARS, SPYMAR, all that stuff we gave them. Wait a minute. Extreme personnel shortages. In other words, the Russians are killing all their troops. Now, what the Russians say is, taking ground is a necessary evil in a war. We're going to kill all your troops. We're going to blow up all your stuff. And you can, at that point, we can walk across the ground because ain't nobody going to be there to protect it. And what do they say? In large part due to increasingly extreme personnel shortage. Might I add this? Just logically speaking, in a war, you got all these personnel, so you don't have personnel shortages. And now you're complaining about personnel shortages. Here's my question. What happened to those personnel that you had? You didn't have personnel shortages. Now you do have personnel shortages. It's almost like they're not there anymore. Did they leave? Did they catch a plane? Did they go home? Or were they all torn to shreds by artillery and Fab 5 bombs and Russian Spetsnaz machine gun turrets? I'm suspecting that your extreme personnel shortages, that's a nice way of saying everybody's dead. We've got extreme personnel shortages. What happened to the soldiers? Oh, they've been ripped apart by shrapnel. But I mean, we don't want to tell you that part. They're all in the graveyard. But we'd rather just say extreme personnel shortages. Kind of like human capital. Don't you love those euphemisms? Hey, what's that? What about your employees? We don't have employees. We have human capital. Oh, hey, all your soldiers were killed. No, none of our soldiers were killed. That's absurd. The Russians can't kill our soldiers. Now, we do have extreme personnel shortages, but that's totally different. Let us continue. Elaborating on personnel shortages affecting frontline. Don't you love that? Personnel shortages. We're talking about personnel shortages, not dead soldiers. Former Chief of Staff of the 12th Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard, Bogdan Krotovich, in late August, lamented that brigades were staffed at just 30% and barely combat ready. So that's what we have. Let's continue. Although Russian forces took extreme losses in early 2022, of course, you got to throw that in there for propaganda purposes, casualty rates in 2024 and 25 have remained far lower. And listen to this. Now you know they're in trouble. This is Military Watch magazine saying this. Okay, listen to this. So the Russians' losses have remained lower and are estimated to be a small fraction of those Ukrainian forces have suffered. Now, this is the West saying that. It's now saying they're getting their ass kicked. They're losing a lot of people, and the Russians ain't. Let's make it short. They're losing a lot of people, and the Russians aren't. How do we interpret that in the context of a war? Oh, I know. We'll call it a loss. It's a war. Hey, what's going on in that war? Well, one side's losing a small fraction of the numbers that the other side's losing. What do you think we could? How do you think we could interpret that? Let's come up with a scientific method for determining what that means. What could it mean? We got one side, lots and lots of deaths. We got another side, a tiny fraction of the deaths. What do you think that is? A stalemate. That's what they've been telling us. It's a stalemate. The kind of stalemate where one side loses a lot and the other side only loses a little. That's a stalemate. That's the kind of stalemate we've got. The vast discrepancies in firepower between the two countries increasingly force Ukraine to rely on masses of expendable manpower. Discrepancies in firepower. I wonder what that means. Although its current personnel shortages has indicated that this approach was far from sustainable. Personnel shortages have resulted in a growing reliance on foreign combatants to bolster frontline positions, including contractor personnel from Brazil and Colombia, and the Polish volunteer courses, with smaller numbers from higher income countries, including British Royal Marines and the American Forward Observation Group. Foreign units have also frequently suffered significant casualties. In other words, the Russians are like, send them all in, we'll kill them. Doesn't matter who you are. Our artillery ain't got no eyes. As they used to say, 8 to 80, blind, crippled, and crazy. Send them in. Send Colombians, Americans, Brits. It doesn't matter. That artillery has no conscience. It's going to do the same. They're done. They're finished. Where are we? Let's see. Anything else? I think that's it. Is anything else? The number of deserters, they talk about deserters, 400,000. This threatens to create a vicious cycle in which greater casualties cause higher desertion rates. What do you know? Greater casualties. So people look at that and say, gee, if I go to the front lines, I'm going to be killed. I'm out of here. Imagine that. With the effects of both of those being greater personnel shortages that leave forces on the front lines vulnerable, in turn, driving casualty rates even higher. Let's interpret that again. They lost. It's over. They've lost the war. Is there anything else? Euroclear issues stark warning to EU over Russian assets plot. No, they just can't take the money. Baltic nations. I think that's it. Here's something interesting. Just throw this in here. Russian president, the Russians ready to provide Europe with written security guarantees. So what Russia's saying that they'll give. They said, well, we've never planned. To say that Russia is planning to attack Europe. For us, that sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? We've never planned anything like that, President Putin noted. But if they want to hear it from us, well, fine, we'll write it down. The Russian president suggested that European leaders might be trying to create an illusion for their populations or creating to defense companies. Maybe they're trying to prop up their domestic political ratings, given the lamentable states of their economies. But in our eyes, of course, it's just nonsense. So the Russians are saying, yeah, you want a written security guarantee, we'll do it. We got time for you. As I've said, if the European countries said to Russia, we've decided to acquiesce, we all want to come under the Russian Federation right now, Russians would look at the Europeans and say, yeah, no thanks. Guys, we're good. I've been to Moscow. I've been to London. I'll take Moscow every single time over London. Moscow's nice. Moscow's beautiful. The food's great. It's clean. There's the crime is low. The prices are reasonable. None of those things are true in London. No thanks. I'll pass. All right, everybody. Let me look and see. Do we have any super chats? Do we Have any super chats? Do we have any super chats? Do we? I think I saw one. And if we got super chats, oh wait, did we have a few? All right, let's go. Vaquero Supreme 3189 says, I wouldn't be surprised in that Estonian wonder Callis has Nazis in her family history like Ursula von der Loco. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes, they're all their family history. In her current family right now, they're goose stepping around if they've got a Thanksgiving dinner, which they don't, they're goose stepping around the table. They're counting out like, Dad, Mom, can I have some cookies? Yes, eins, zwei, drei, vier. And then they got to fight over the cookies. They're gonna, they're all she's got like a leather riding strop, and that's the way they march around the table. They're psychos. I'm telling you, they're sick people. Are you hearing about an earthquake in Alaska? Let's find out. EARTH quake, Alaska. Let's see. I mean, there ain't but 300,000 people in the entire country, so I don't know. Let's see. 18 minutes, 6.0 magnitude earthquake strikes northwest of Anchorage. Tsunami is not expected. No reports of damages or fatalities. I mean, out there, a few salmon were shaken up and maybe some grizzly bears pooped themselves. Other than that, ain't a whole lot. You ever been in Alaska? Like 300,000. It's like a third the size of the entire continental United States. And there's like as many people as in like my neighborhood. How many people in Alaska? Like 300,000. So, I mean, yeah. Luckily, let's see. They had a 9.2 in 1964. So I don't see. I'm looking. They got shook up a little bit on old Turkey Day. I think that's it. I don't see anything major happening. Let me look again. Let me look across good old Telegram. I don't see much happening. Oh, here we go. Let's see what this is. Rumors of indirect messages from Iran and the U.S. are absolute lies. That's according to Iran. Anything else? I don't see anything that makes me jump out. Here's something. Orban, let's see what Viktor Orban says. Orban promises U.S. sanctions exempt Russia, oil and gas to Hungary's neighbors. If we have it, Serbia will have it too. Whatever we have, we will share. You can count on us. I think that is it. Somebody said, oh, thank you very much. Happy Turkey Day. Something else that is interesting. I don't know if you saw this. So there was two shooters in, there was two people who were shot in DC. And these guys were, what do you call it? They were National Guardsmen, right? There are a couple of things that are interesting about that. Number one, it was this Afghan guy, right? I'll just read a little bit of the story. This is not going to shock you. The Afghan who shot at the U.S. National Guard soldiers near the White House had previously worked with the CIA. He worked with the Secret Service as part of the forces that helped the United States in Kandahar. The agency's director, John Radcliffe, said in an interview with Fox News that such people should never have come to the United States. 2 wounded National Guard soldiers remain in critical condition. Isn't this something interesting? A few years ago, there was a guy who shot up this gay bar in Tampa. And we found out that his father had been like an FBI informant. If you recall, I think it was Manchester in England at an Ariana Grande concert. And these guys blew it up. And we found out that they had worked with like MI6 and they had been transported back and forth to Libya or something like that. You recall that? And these guys were involved with intelligence, and then they were doing bombings at this Ariana Grande concert. Now we got this schmuck, poor bastard, probably what is it? What is this stuff? An MK Ultra victim. This bastard So he's apparently shot a couple of National Guard soldiers. I don't know. It could just be some person that shot two innocent, I mean, these National Guard soldiers were just doing what they were told. They were walking around the streets. Apparently, they were just human beings like anybody else. I do not advocate for violence, but I'm just saying, why the hell is it that every time we find somebody who's involved in some shooting, they're always connected? You're like, let's look at his history. Holy crap! Oswald really was with the CIA every single time. Let me give you one other thing. I got some other info here. Let me find it. You might want to know this about this shooter. Let's find this something about the shooter that you may find interesting. Where is it? Google Trends. Now, the guy's name was Ramanullah Lochinwall. That was the shooter of the Afghan people, right? I got this right here. James Lee, DC shooting update. Google Trends showed a small spike in traffic for Ramanullah Lochinwall on 11/20/25, 6 days prior to the attack. So 6 days prior to the attack, they're searching his name. Oh, both guardsmen died. Very, very unfortunate. This was somebody's family member. So that's certainly sad. Listen to this. Google Trends showed a small spike in traffic for Ramanullah Lochinwall on 11/20/25, 6 days prior to the attack. So according to Google Trends, 6 days before the attack, there was a small spike in people searching his name. Then on the morning of, another spike, this time dwarfing even the search traffic after news of the shooting broke. Very strange. Interesting spike of aberration of searches for Ramanullah on November 20th, originating from the Washington, D.C. area. So 6 days before the shooting, somebody in Washington, D.C. was searching this guy's name. I don't know. Maybe he was searching his own name. I don't know. Who knows? But a guy who used to work for intelligence, his name was searched 6 days before the shooting. He then commits the shooting. And on the morning before he commits the shooting, there's another spike in searches for his name. Pure coincidence. And now they're going to be like, yes, he's a illegal immigrant. Let me tell you something. When the shooting happened, I knew he's either a trans activist or an illegal immigrant. Those are the two options you get right now when it comes to false flags. You already know what happened. There was a shooting. Well, you know what I'm going to say? Was he a trans activist or a illegal immigrant? Because that's the only false flag options they're using right now. We may get something else in the future. Fair enough. But right now, you got two options. They're either a trans activist or an illegal immigrant. That's it. Forget it. But for some reason, they always worked with the CIA or MI6. That's not an option. That's always the case. But who they are, their cover now, the story for who they are now is always a trans activist or illegal immigrant. And then people are going to bite and they're going to be walking around like, yeah, we need to do something about these illegal immigrants. They're going around. That just happen to be former CIA operatives. But that's not irrelevant. That's irrelevant. They're going around here shooting everybody. Oh, I know. When we look into him, we'll find that he was both a trans activist and an illegal immigrant. That's the only thing next, right? So we know we've had a trans activist, quick change artist. Now we get an illegal immigrant. Next, well, actually, he's not illegal. Apparently, he was applying for refugee status, but close enough. He's an immigrant. That's good enough for these. If it's good enough for the CIA, damn it, it's good enough for me, right? So next, we're going to get this. Okay. The shooter, the strangler, the bomber, the terrorist, the drug fentanyl dealer, whatever the case is, it will be. Next comes this. Shockingly, this time, he's an illegal immigrant trans activist. That's right. This guy is a trans activist, furry, has a boy girlfriend who's a furry person, and he's out doing his trans activism illegally as an immigrant, and he just decided to blow up a building. I don't know, maybe building 7, building 8. And he blew up a building, and oddly enough, we found his passport laying on the street. The building was blown up with 1 million pounds of dynamite. Everything was disintegrated. except his passport, which was found a block away, laying unharmed on the street. And then a building, which we'll call building 7.5, oddly enough, just dropped. Like 2 hours later, it was like, hey, what's going on with that building? I don't know, but it looks kind of, holy crap, it dropped. They got me convinced. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate everybody spending their hour with their 1 hour and 4 minutes with me, having a little bit of fun, talking about reality on Thanksgiving Day in the United States and just Thursday everywhere else. I was supposed to, now let me say this. I was supposed to have Mark Sloboda on at noon, and I forgot. And Mark Sloboda sent me a message, and I looked up at 12:30. I'm running, la, 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 and I looked, and I'm, holy crap! I went to the gym this morning. I got distracted at the gym. That's a whole nother story. Got distracted, working out, had fun. And then I forgot Mark Sloboda. So I wouldn't blame Mark Sloboda if he never came on my show again, because I stood the poor guy up. But Mark Sloboda is a very, very good friend of mine. I had a fantastic time. I had like the best meal ever in my life hanging out, partly because it was hanging out with Mark and his lovely wife. He's that guy's really great. And I had a wonderful time hanging out with him in Moscow. But hopefully he will find it in his heart, in his cynical heart, to you know what, to forgive me. And by the way, just in memory, well, okay, not memory, and he's still with us, but let's just remember before we go, since Mark Sloboda isn't with us today, he will be soon. Don't forget The Real Politique with Mark Sloboda. Make sure you go there. He's got 254 subscribers. Let's make it 300 subscribers. Thanks a lot, everybody. Our dear friend, Mark Sloboda, he's the best. Support Mark Sloboda. I'm out. And thank you. And by the way, watch out for illegal immigrant trans activists. They're up to no good.